Coming to you live from Nairobi, Kenya. Welcome to Africa Focus, where we bring you news from across the continent right here on Switch TV Kenya. My name is Joel Church and our sign language interpreter is Teresia Washita. Start interacting with us on our social media platforms at Switch TV Kenya, at Joel Chacha M on Twitter, and as well on Facebook, Switch TV Kenya and Joel Chacha. Send in an SMS via 22999 free of charge. But first, here are stories making headlines. Celebrated Zimbabwean author Tsitsi Dangaremba speaks out after the arrest at an anti-government protest. Displaced Sudanese are seeking shelter after at least 10 people were killed and more than 3,300 homes ruined by floods triggered by torrential rains across much of Sudan. We begin with the Africa Roundup stories.
Mali's largest jail is a squalid and overcrowded colonial-era throwback that in theory is an open invitation to coronavirus. Instead, staff at Bamako Central Prison say that so far they have kept the dreaded virus at bay, thanks to time-honored techniques of hygiene and self-help. The International Committee of the Red Cross is also donating hand-washing kits, which are dotted around the prison, and is encouraging prisoners to manufacture their own face masks. The ICRC buys some 500 masks a week from inmates who work as tailors and then redistributes them. The only crossing between Gaza and Egypt opened on Tuesday for 72 hours, allowing people to leave the Palestinian enclave for the first time since the novel coronavirus outbreak began. The Rafah crossing in southern Gaza was closed in March as Hamas, the Islamist group that controls the strip, sought to guard against a major virus outbreak in the densely populated territory with weak health infrastructure. Rafah was open for 3 days in April, but only to allow Gazans stranded abroad to return home. The crossing reopened for limited two-way movement on Tuesday. Gaza's Interior Ministry spokesman Liad Al-Bazam said people who hold foreign passports, foreign residency permits, or emergency medical needs will be allowed to leave. Hundreds of Gazans had assembled before dawn at waiting room, preparing to exit. Gaza resident Hatem Al-Masi said he needed medical care, but voiced concern about infection risk in Egypt, which has registered more than 95,000 COVID-19 cases compared to just 81 in Gaza. Gaza, under an Israeli-enforced blockade since 2007, was uniquely protected against the coronavirus since access was already tightly controlled before the outbreak. But the dire economic conditions and a poor healthcare system, partly caused by the blockade, also made Gaza especially vulnerable to the virus. Hamas has maintained tight restrictions throughout the pandemic. Departure flights from the Libyan capital's only functional airport resume after a long suspension due to fighting between rival forces and restrictive measures imposed by the authorities due to the novel coronavirus.
Moving on, Zimbabwean writer Tsitsi Dangaremba and opposition party spokesperson Fazai Mahere speaks out after the arrest at an anti-government protest. Dangaremba criticizes the militarization of civilian areas in her country, adding that all Zimbabweans should be outraged by such things and that this is not Zimbabwe. Amina Hussein tells us more.
It was a sick that for Zimbabwean author Tsitsi Dangaremba started with elation and ended in despair. It began with the news that her latest novel had been longlisted for one of the world's top literary awards, a dazzling peak in her career.
I feel I have to act as a Zimbabwean because all of us should be outraged by such things and immediately say, we're going to change this. This is not Zimbabwe.
She was arrested, charged with inciting public violence after taking part in a two-women silent protest. On the morning of July 31st, the 61-year-old left home telling her husband she'll be back shortly from staging a snap protest along a nearby road.
In my eyes, I was, as a responsible citizen, engaging in expression and discussion around the problems of Zimbabwe. So I was sad when I realized that we are not allowed to do that.
What that arrest represents is the deteriorating human rights situation in Zimbabwe, where people are no longer free And we've known that Zimbabweans are not free, but now if you cannot step outside your home to protest against the national crisis, the hunger crisis, the public health crisis, the corruption crisis, it tells a story.
The economy is battling inflation and chronic shortages, from clean water to drugs and food, to which the damage from the coronavirus pandemic must be added. The United Nations has signaled a rapidly expanding emergency in which 2/3 of the population will face hunger by year's end.
The people are electing the government to rule us well. So if the government does not rule us well, the social contract is broken. Then one of the other things that is affecting people in Zimbabwe is the deployment of the military and the militarization of civilian areas.
President Emerson Mnangagwa later warned bad apples which will be flushed out, while he also referred to unnamed terrorist opposition and dark forces existing in the country. One thing that worries Ndageraba is the militarization of our civilian areas. Ndageraba started studying medicine at the University of Cambridge, but did not finish as her parents moved to Zimbabwe at independence. She switched courses to study psychology at the University of Zimbabwe, then went to study film in Germany. Ndageraba stepped into the international limelight in 1988 with her debut novel Nervous Conditions, a coming-of-age story about a girl's battle to escape poverty and get an education in the Rhodesia before the country gained its independence from Britain in 1980.
Meanwhile, displaced South Sudan citizens are walking across flooded areas in Khartoum to seek shelter after at least 10 people were killed and more than 3,300 homes ruined by flooding. Some 1,800 homes were completely destroyed, while just over 1,500 were partially ruined, while 21 schools and 8 mosques were swept away. Fatma Ngwena now reports.
At least 10 people were killed and more than 3,300 homes ruined by flooding triggered by torrential rains across much of Sudan this week, the country's civil defense organization said on Thursday. Some 1,800 homes were completely destroyed, while just over 1,500 were partially ruined, it said, while 21 schools and 8 mosques were swept away.
When I entered the neighborhood, I found the water level reaching this point. I told people this year there is a lot of water, and they told me the water level was much higher than previous years. And yesterday, the water level reached this point.
Downpours in Blue Nile State caused a dam to collapse on July 29, destroying or damaging 800 homes and potentially compromising access to water for over 84,000 people, said UN Organization for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA, in a statement.
We want water drainage. We asked for several things that we did not receive. And now, if someone wants to go to the bathroom, how can that person sit in the water? There's water on both sides. Women can manage, but our sisters and mothers can't. They said they will prepare makeshift bathrooms for us, but did not arrive. We have 50 tents already. Where are the rest? They did not come for several days.
Heavy rains typically hit Sudan between June and October each year, resulting in frequent flooding.
Now this flood has come and destroyed this country, and the governor came and said that he will bring sand to cover the water. But until now, no truck carrying sand has come, and they brought us tents which are failing.
The UN said on Wednesday that more than 50,000 people had been affected by the flooding.
Elsewhere, pupils in their final year of primary, secondary and tertiary institutions or other education resume classes in the Democratic Republic of Congo after the end of the state of emergency. President Felix Tshisekedi visited some schools in Kinshasa to mark the occasion, saying the students should concentrate on their studies for they will be taken care of.
It makes me very happy because I'm going to see all my friends and my teacher again. First of all, always wear a mask and walk with disinfectant. Stand at least 1 meter away from people. Cough or sneeze into the crook of the elbow.
tousser dans le creux du coude ou bien éternuer.
Nous avons des infrastructures.
We have infrastructure that allows us to have 400 places, but we can pull 400 students in class. So we split up the class so that we can observe social distancing measures.
Pouvoir assurer des mesures de barrières de distanciation sociale.
En revanche, ce que nous allons vous demander, c'est de faire...
What we are going to ask you to do is to be very careful about coronavirus disease. It's true that we have lifted the state of emergency, but the disease, the virus, is not gone.
Mais la maladie, le virus, n'a pas disparu. Concentrez-vous sur vos études.
You concentrate on your studies. We'll take care of the rest. I wish you a happy end of the year.
Je vous souhaite une...
The coronavirus pandemic has affected lives of many Kenyans, with children living in one of our children's home located in Dagoretti here in Nairobi, facing a double tragedy. During these hard times, the children lack proper items to curb coronavirus, including masks and sanitizers. Our reporter Amina Hussein visited the children's home and filed the following story.
As you roll the rock to see what's beneath, you come across a sight of young children playing. The joy in them glows, living with no clue that they are in dire need. At the heart of Dagoretti lies St. Dorcas Educational Center, a place called home by many orphaned children. Far from being just a home, the children obtain their lower and upper primary education from the institute. Judging from the children's appearance, one can be easily deceived by the calmness and state of awareness. Despite the challenges surrounding them and the not-so-pleasing environment, the children still manage to call the place home. Jacinta Nduru, St. Dorcas Center founder, narrates on the difficult condition brought about by the worldwide COVID-19 pandemic.
We started in the year 2005. It started as a fellowship, where we used to meet, interdenominational fellowship. We can go every Wednesday and feed families who we felt were in need and pray with them together. And it's in that process that we realized feeding alone was not helping, because this week we could go to a family, the other week we could not go back to the previous family, and as well as we realized whatever maybe we gave this week, they may have been in need of rent, and you've brought for them food. And we found so many children by then are not going to school. That was in the year 2005. There was a slum here called Kwanganga slums. So we felt as a group, if we extended our help to the children, if a child is nurtured and given education and all basic needs, then in the future they can rely on themselves, and of course their families, and the entire community now is going to grow well.
According to Jacinta, the situation is getting harder day by day, judging from the long spell without donors.
The Minister of Education has directed, but we are trying our best. As we know, health, when children are healthy, then it's going to minimize even our expenses. So we've tried our best to have, but like in the sleeping areas, you'll find it's difficult for us, now that maybe the well-wishers who have been helping are less as compared to those other times, and children are needed to stay maybe in a town in a band. The distance is not as much as it's needed. Though we are trying our best, we are trying to make sure at least they wash their hands. That one is compulsory. But the rest of the things that now, maybe wearing mask every day, that one we cannot afford.
Far from the essential needs, the children have been forced to live without masks, a hard condition to bear, especially during these tough COVID-19 times.
Those who are HIV positive, so far, those are the ones that we are struggling, because now, as we know, the issue of COVID, they need to take balanced diet, and it's really a challenge for us. At times, what we are offering is maybe githeri or ugali with the skuma. You know, that child is not really getting any, the immune is not going to be well.
However, following numerous attempts by the founder to ensure the children achieve their basic needs, one of the center's beneficiaries has taken it upon himself to aid the center by offering his services to the children. As each day comes to an end, Jacinta is positive enough of the good times in the future. There is hope in everything that meets their eye, a clear indication that shows that all is not lost. St. Dorcas Educational Center requests for a helping hand during these tough times. Reporting for Switch TV, I'm Amina Hussein.
Time to take a breather. Stay with us here on Africa Focus. Still to come. Ivory Coast opposition figures criticize the country's president's decision to run for a third term in the October 31st presidential election. Welcome back to Africa Focus. My name is Joel Church and our sign language interpreter is Teresia Washira. Moving on, the different ways of fish preservation has seen those investing in the business in Lake Victoria reap numerous benefits, and as Hadia Masiwa now reports, the innovation has helped prevent huge losses brought about by fish going bad.
This is how fish around shores of Lake Victoria is weighed before the admission into the cold room for storage.
Yes, so we can store the fish, and women can keep their fish and sell the other day, maybe tomorrow, with the fresh fish. Yes.
These women who buy fish in wholesale from fishermen on shore to sell on retail depend on this available storage facility, which store fish depending on the type. For these tiny fish, commonly known as daga, laying them in the open under the scorching sun is the most appropriate means of preservation and most preferred by fish lovers. This kind is dipped into frying pans until they cook, and for those who prefer them crunchy, they are also catered for.
Women pay a little, like 10 bob per fish. It depends with the fish you have, but cheap as 10 bob.
Despite businesses bringing in very low returns due to the COVID-19 pandemic, these storage rooms keep those in the fish business around this area, avoiding experiencing huge losses. Hadia Masiwa, Switch TV.
Shifting gears now to politics, the prospect of a third term running as president for Alpha Conde in Guinea has stirred bloody months-long protests in the West African state. Kennedy Kimani with more.
Guinean Prime Minister Kasori Fofana on Wednesday proclaimed his support for President Alpha Conde at a party convention likely to confirm whether he runs for that term in office, a scenario that has stirred bloody protest in the West African state.
This is the starting point today for a new bright and promising future for Guinea and Guineans. We are proud to be vectors of this new hope for our country and our people.
Fofana made the appeal at the state of a two-day convention of the rally of the Guinean people to select a candidate for a presidential vote expected in October.
We've seen that Alpha Conde is the best choice. What he has done for 10 years, no president in this country has done.
Conde is near the end of his 5-year term in office, the maximum under the old constitution, which has just been revised and approved by referendum. Critics say the changes are a ploy to enable the 82-year-old to reset his term in power.
Alpha Conde is not only the choice of the Rainbow RPG, it is the choice of a whole people.
The Electoral Commission has proposed that the presidential poll be held on October 18th, but Conde has yet to issue a decree.
Elsewhere, people gathered in Bamboo's Vitex area in Mauritius to help contain an oil spill that is threatening the island's ecosystem. More than 1,000 tons of fuel had already seeped from the bulk carrier MV Wakashio into the sea off southeast Mauritius, and the vessel's damaged tanker carrying nearly 2,000 tons of fuel is at risk of splitting apart. Amina Hussein tells us more.
Salvage crews raced against time on Monday to prevent a second disastrous oil spill off in the picture-perfect coastline of Mauritius, with a damaged tanker carrying thousands of tons of fuel at risk of spilling apart. The bulk carrier MV Wakashio ran aground on July 25th with 4,000 tons of fuel aboard and began sipping oil last week, staining coral reefs, mangrove forests and tranquil lagoons in an unprecedented environment catastrophe for the archipelago nation. More than 1,000 tons have already oozed from the ship, its Japanese operator says, causing untold ecological damage to protected marine parks and fishing grounds that form the backbone of Mauritius' economy. Fuel was being slowly airlifted from the ship Monday by helicopter to the shore, but efforts to pump more from the hold were being thwarted by rough seas and strong winds. The weather, which is also fanning the oil slick further up the coast, is not forecast to improve until evening. Divers have reported fresh cracks in the hull, while cracking sounds from the vessel could be heard from the southeast shore, where a major cleanup operation is underway to remove drizzly sludge coating miles of Mauritius' unspoiled coastline. Japan on Monday dispatched a 6-member team, including members of its Coast Guard, to assist. France has sent more 20 tons of technological equipment for Africa Focus. I'm Amina Hussein.
Away from that, and now in politics, Ivory Coast President Alassane Ouattara has announced he will contest the presidential polls in October, which come after years of political turbulence and civil war in the world's top cocoa grower. Ivorian opposition figures criticized President Alassane Ouattara's decision to run for a third term in the October 31st presidential election. Cedric Oronje now reports.
Ivory Coast President Alassane Ouattara said Thursday he will contest 10th presidential polls in October, which come after a year of political turbulence and civil war in the world's top cocoa grower.
We find this decision unacceptable because we believe that President Ouattara is trying to cling to power.
Ouattara's decision to run for a third term in October's presidential election triggered outrage on Friday among opposition and civil society groups who labeled it as a coup that risked tipping the country into chaos. He had previously argued that a constitutional change has reset the clock, enabling him to potentially run again. But a new constitution was adopted in 2016, which Ouattara and his supporters argue reset the clock, allowing him to run again, an interpretation strongly contested by the opposition.
We are saying that Mr. Ouattara himself must respect his own constitution, which prohibits him from running for that term. It is a matter of stability.
Ouattara, in power since 2010, said in March that he will not run for re-election, which the opposition has strongly maintained he was unable to do anyway because the constitution limits presidents to 2 terms. But the race was turned on its head by the sudden death of Prime Minister Amadou Gon Coulibaly, seen as Ouattara's anointed successor, from a heart attack in July.
Elsewhere, Lagos' key third mainland bridge is partially closed for renovation for a 6-month period, worsening traffic in Nigeria's economic capital. The third mainland is Africa's second largest bridge, extending nearly 12 kilometers along Lagos Lagoon to link Lagos Island, which is the mainland where most people live. Its partial closure has had a serious impact on the economy, with one economist saying that the productivity loss due to the traffic congestion comes to as much as $383 million.
Traffic is too much. We need them to help us to maybe you can find another way that we can, the alternative that we can use.
They are charging us because of the inconvenience of the closure of the bridge and because of the traffic, because the drivers feel they'll be in traffic for a while, longer than the usual time they're supposed to be in traffic, or they're supposed to apply that route.
The productivity loss per day due to traffic congestion in Lagos is $383 million.
That's all here on Africa Focus. My name is Joel Church and our sign language interpreter is Teresia Washira. Keep the conversation going on our social media platforms and at Switch TV Kenya and at Joel Chacha M on Twitter, and as well on Facebook, Switch TV Kenya and Joel Church. Until next time, do have yourself a great day.